He thought he was just saving a lost dog. He didn't know its owner had been watching his every move, deciding if he was the one man left in the world she could trust. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The rain came down like it had a score to settle, pounding the tin roof of Turner's garage in erratic bursts. Wind howled through the narrow alley beside the shop, rattling loose signs and sending trash bins toppling. Michael stood just inside the bay door, a socket wrench in one hand, staring out into the chaos. The sky had gone charcoal gray, and the storm had rolled in faster than the forecast warned, typical for their little town. He should have gone home by now. Emily was safe at his sister's place, warm and dry, with a blanket and cartoons. But this truck needed its brakes by morning, and Michael was behind on the rent, again. That's when he heard it. At first he thought it was the wind, just the moaning groan of metal shifting under pressure. But then it came again, sharper, desperate, a bark. He squinted into the downpour. A flash of lightning lit up the lot behind the shop, and that's when he saw it. A golden blur darting between the trees near the back fence. Wet fur matted down by rain, tail tucked, limping slightly as it stumbled toward the edge of the woods. Another bark, then a whimper. Michael set the wrench down without thinking. He grabbed his coat from the hook by the office door, the one with the broken zipper, and pulled it tight across his chest. The rain hit him like ice needles as he jogged across the lot, boots sloshing through puddles. "Hey," he called out, voice barely audible over the storm. "Easy there, buddy." The dog froze for a second, then tried to bolt, but its back leg gave out. Michael slowed his approach, crouching down. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The dog looked at him, ears flattened, breathing hard. Mud caked its paws, and one side was scraped raw. Michael reached out slowly, letting the animal smell his hand. After a tense second, the dog stepped forward. "There you go," Michael murmured, wrapping his arms around it. It didn't resist. By the time they reached the garage, both were soaked to the bone. Michael grabbed a stack of clean rags and started drying the dog gently. "Well, you sure picked one hell of a night to show up," he said softly. The dog didn't bark again. It just laid there beside him, eyes half closed as if it had finally found safe ground. The storm hadn't let up. Rain still lashed against the windows, thunder rumbling low like a grudge that refused to fade. Inside the garage it was quiet but tense, the kind of silence that comes after something unexpected, like a stranger knocking at your door past midnight. Michael crouched beside the dog, towel in hand, gently wiping away the worst of the mud. The golden retriever, no older than 2 maybe, watched him with wary eyes, but didn't pull away. Trust came slow, but not impossible. "Someone must be missing you," Michael muttered, brushing a clump of wet leaves from the dog's flank. The coat was thick and shiny beneath the grime. Well-groomed, well-fed. This wasn't a stray living under porches or digging through trash cans. This dog belonged to someone. That's when he noticed the collar. A deep green leather band, stitched with precision and clasped with a polished brass buckle. There was a tag, too, oval-shaped, thick, and shiny. He turned it over, his brow furrowed. No name, no number, no address. Just one word, engraved in delicate cursive, Sonny. Michael blinked. That was it. No phone number, no microchip ID, not even a vet's emblem, just the name. He glanced at the dog again, Sonny, he guessed now, and tried to make sense of it. Who puts a collar on a dog like this and doesn't leave a way to call them? Rich folks, maybe. The kind who don't think their dog would ever get lost. Or maybe the kind who didn't actually want to be found. Michael shook the thought off. Maybe the tag had fallen off, and this was a spare. Maybe there was a chip. He'd take Sonny to the vet, first thing tomorrow, to scan it. He tossed the towel into the laundry bin and grabbed a blanket from the office. Sonny followed him hesitantly, tail giving the slightest wag. Michael opened the door to the small break room at the back of the garage, really just an old couch, a mini fridge, and a coffee maker that hadn't worked since summer. "You can sleep here tonight," he said, laying out the blanket in the corner. Sonny curled up instantly, letting out a sigh that sounded too human for comfort. Michael turned off the lights and paused in the doorway, eyes lingering on the dog. Something about this felt like the start of something bigger. He just didn't know what yet. The next morning broke calm and pale, like the storm had exhausted itself and left the world to clean up the mess. Light spilled through the shop's dusty windows, casting soft gold across the concrete floor. Michael stirred his coffee in silence, leaning against the counter in the break room, the air smelling faintly of motor oil and burnt toast. He glanced at the curled-up figure in the corner. Sonny hadn't moved much during the night, save for a few soft whimpers in his sleep. Whatever this dog had been through, it had left more than just scratches. At 7:15, the front bell jingled, a sound far too cheerful for how early it was. Michael didn't need to look. "You're early, Ems," he called. Emily Turner appeared in the doorway like a gust of energy, wrapped in a pink hoodie, her school backpack bouncing behind her. "Aunt Lucy had to leave for work early," she said quickly, but her eyes were already searching the room. Then she saw him. Her face lit up like someone had flipped on every light in the room. "Daddy, is that a dog? Is he ours? Can we keep him? What's his name? Can I pet him?" Michael held up a hand, barely managing a breath between her questions. "He showed up last night. I don't know who he belongs to yet, just letting him rest for now." Emily knelt down slowly, careful not to spook the dog. Sonny opened one eye, gave a cautious sniff, and then, just like that, rested his chin on her lap. Michael blinked. "Huh, took me 2 hours to get that close." Emily giggled, already stroking behind Sonny's ears like they'd been friends forever. "He likes me. Look, he's not even scared. Can we call him Sonny? 'Cause he's gold and warm, and he looks like the sun." Michael raised an eyebrow. "That's oddly fitting." "Please, Dad? Just for now?" she asked, glancing up at him with wide eyes and that familiar hopeful tilt of her head. Michael sighed, sipping his coffee. "Just until we find his real owner." Emily grinned. "Then I'll help look extra slow." And Sonny, he wagged his tail like he'd just made a lifelong decision. The night came in soft and cold, with a sky full of stars trying to poke through thin clouds. The town had quieted into its usual hush, porch lights flickering, windows glowing, and the distant hum of a late freight train rumbling past the fields. Inside the garage, Michael lay on the break room couch, still wearing his work boots, a fleece blanket pulled halfway up. He'd meant to head home hours ago, but the exhaustion had other plans. He didn't even remember closing his eyes. In the corner, Sonny lay curled up on the old blanket, chest rising and falling in an even rhythm. Emily had insisted on brushing him earlier that afternoon, and now his coat was soft and clean, a faint smell of strawberry dog shampoo lingering in the air. Michael had chuckled at the time. Emily said Sonny looked like royalty now. He didn't argue. The street outside remained still, no wind, no footsteps, just the quiet pulse of small-town night. Then headlights. They moved slowly, almost cautiously, before going dark. A black SUV rolled to a stop across the street from Turner's garage. Its windows were tinted too dark to see through, and the engine idled for a moment before cutting off. No one got out. Inside the garage, Sonny stirred. He didn't bark, didn't growl, just lifted his head, ears twitching. His body went stiff, eyes alert, focused on something just beyond the wall. The SUV sat there like a shadow, unmoving, its silhouette barely visible in the darkness. After 3 minutes, precisely 3, it pulled away without a sound, disappearing down the road like it had never been there at all. Sonny stayed tense for a moment longer, eyes fixed on the now empty window. Then, slowly, he lowered his head back onto his paws. But he didn't sleep, not for a while. Michael never stirred. He didn't know about the SUV, didn't see the way Sonny had watched it, with the kind of focus animals only get when they recognize something or someone. Across town, the SUV turned into a gated driveway, its driver silent. The dog had been found. Now it was time to see who had found him. By the end of the week, Michael had checked every bulletin board in town, the library, Rosie's Diner, the post office window, where local babysitters and lost cat flyers gathered like leaves in autumn. Nothing, not one sign, no lost dog photo, no reward notice. No mention of a missing golden retriever named Sonny. It didn't make sense. Dogs like this didn't just go missing unnoticed. Sonny was purebred, clearly trained, and wore a collar worth more than Michael's monthly grocery bill. Somebody, somewhere, had to be looking for him. But 5 days had passed, and still silence. He asked around, casually at first, at the gas station, to the clerk who knew everyone's business, at church between conversations about leaky roofs and overdue car inspections. "Anyone lose a golden retriever?" he'd ask, holding out a photo Emily had drawn with crayons, big smile, wagging tail. She even added little sparkles around the ears. People smiled, said no, asked if they could pet him. A few joked that if no one claimed him, Michael had lucked into the perfect dog. But that was the thing. Michael didn't believe in luck, not the kind that just dropped a flawless, unclaimed pet into your life with no strings attached. Back at the garage, Sonny had slipped easily into routine. He waited by the bay door every morning, trotted beside Michael as he fetched parts, and greeted customers like he'd been doing it for years. Emily stopped asking if they'd find his owner. She just started calling him ours. Michael didn't correct her. Still, something gnawed at him. He'd leave the porch light on longer at night, glance twice at cars that slowed near the shop, half expecting someone to come knocking. He even checked the local shelter database once, heart thudding. Nothing. No chip match, no report, no owner, just a dog with no past and a bond growing thicker by the day. And somewhere, far from the garage's cracked pavement and smell of motor oil, a woman sat behind a tinted window watching a screen. No posters printed, no calls made. She already knew where her dog was. She just wasn't ready to come get him. Not yet. Rosie's Diner always smelled like bacon grease and cinnamon, and tonight was no different. The booths were half full with regulars, the same folks who came in after church, after work, or just because the coffee was better than what they had at home. The jukebox in the corner hummed out an old country song, and the waitress, Cheryl, floated between tables with that worn-out charm only small-town servers could master. Michael sat across from Emily in their usual spot by the window, their table cluttered with a basket of fries and a half-eaten grilled cheese. Emily swung her legs beneath the booth, humming to herself as she drew a little heart on a napkin. Sonny waited outside, tied gently to the post, sitting obediently with his head tilted toward the door, like he knew who was inside and why it mattered. Michael leaned back with a quiet sigh and glanced at the check. $7 and change. He pulled out his wallet and started sorting through the small pile of crumpled bills and quarters. He made it work, he always did, but it never stopped feeling like stretching a single thread across a canyon. Unseen by him, in the back corner near the pie display, a woman watched. She sat alone, posture straight, her coat still on, and her coffee untouched. Her dark hair was swept back into a low ponytail, not a strand out of place. Her eyes, sharp and still, never left Michael. Not in a suspicious way, not in a romantic way either. It was something else. A quiet observation, like watching a scene play out she'd already seen in her mind before. When Cheryl stopped by with the check, Michael smiled politely and handed over the pile of coins. "Sorry for the dimes," he said. Cheryl winked. "Money's money, sweetheart. Emily eat enough?" "Always," Michael chuckled. "She'd eat 2 if I let her." The woman in the corner listened to every word. Outside, Sonny perked up, nose twitching, gaze locked on the window. The woman glanced his way just for a second. Then she stood, left a 20 on the table, and slipped out the side door without a word. Emily never saw her. Michael never noticed, but Sonny did. He watched her walk away without barking, just a tilt of the head, like he already knew her. The estate sat on a hill just outside town, hidden by iron gates, and a long gravel driveway that wound through trees like a secret only the wind could trace. It was the kind of place people whispered about. Too elegant for a town like this, too quiet for someone that powerful to call home. But behind the tall windows and manicured hedges, Maya Whitlock stood alone, barefoot on polished hardwood floors, still wearing the black blazer she hadn't bothered to take off. She sipped cold tea from a crystal glass, but her attention wasn't on the drink. It was on the large screen in front of her, mounted above a fireplace that hadn't seen flame in years. A paused frame glowed. Michael Turner at Rosie's Diner, hunched slightly in his seat, laughing at something his daughter said. He looked exhausted. He looked kind. She pressed play. The footage came from a camera disguised in the diner's smoke detector. Legal? Barely. Ethical? Probably not, but necessary. In her world, always. Maya wasn't the type to rely on instinct alone. She vetted every deal, every partner, every word spoken in a room. And Michael Turner, he wasn't part of any deal, not yet. But for months now, she'd been watching, ever since that article had crossed her desk. A local piece about a mechanic who fixed a retired teacher's car for free and left a note that simply said, "Pay it forward when you can." It was buried beneath the noise of business mergers and boardroom scandals, but Maya had saved it. Something about the quiet decency in that gesture had clung to her thoughts longer than it should have. And then Sonny had run off. She could have sent out a team. Could have blanketed the town with flyers in under an hour. But when the GPS collar showed her dog outside a small auto garage and the live feed showed Emily tying a pink scarf around his neck while Michael gently scratched behind his ears, she didn't move. She watched, day after day, because sometimes the best way to find out who someone is to see what they do when they think no one's watching. Maya clicked the remote again. This time the screen showed Sonny, curled up beside Michael's tool bench, Emily curled beside him with a book. Maya exhaled slowly, setting the glass down. Her dog had found something, or someone, and now so had she. Monday started with a notice taped to his front door. Final warning. In bold red letters, threatening water shutoff if the balance wasn't paid by Friday. Tuesday, his boss at the garage pulled him aside. "Nothing personal, Mike. Business is just slow. We're cutting everyone back to 4 days a week." Wednesday, Emily's teacher sent a note home. Her boots were worn through, letting in water during recess. By Thursday, Michael was staring at his bank account like it might blink and change its mind. It didn't. Still, he got up early each morning, packed Emily's lunch, 2 halves of a peanut butter sandwich and a peeled orange, and walked her to school with a smile. He told her the mornings were their adventure walks, even if it was just a shortcut through slushy sidewalks. He fixed a neighbor's flat tire for free, helped Old Man Griffin's lift a new water heater into place. On his day off, he volunteered to look at a woman's car 2 towns over because her husband was deployed and she didn't know where else to go. He didn't say no, even when he had every reason to. Sonny followed him everywhere now, head high, tail swinging, ears perked like he was proud to belong to someone who kept going even when everything else said stop. At the garage, customers had started asking about the dog, and Michael would just nod. "Yeah, he's mine, for now." He still checked for flyers, still hoped for a chip hit, still watched every unfamiliar car that parked too long near the shop, but nothing came. No owner, no explanation, just life, rolling forward with its usual weight. That night, after Emily had fallen asleep on the couch wrapped in a threadbare blanket, Michael sat on the porch step with a cup of instant coffee gone cold. Sonny lay beside him, head resting on Michael's boot. "Think we'll ever catch a break?" Michael asked quietly. Sonny didn't move, just sighed. Behind a row of trees across the street, headlights flickered briefly, then vanished. Michael didn't see them, but someone else did. Watching, waiting, and taking notes on the man who showed up, even when no one was watching. The morning air had a bite to it, crisp enough to see your breath, but not cold enough to keep a man inside. Michael pulled on his faded flannel and stepped off the porch with a toolbox in one hand and a thermos of leftover soup in the other. Sonny trailed close behind, nose twitching at every gust of wind, like he was scanning for something only he could sense. At the corner of Maple and Pine, old Mrs. Hendricks stood on her stoop, wrapped in a shawl that had seen better years. Her voice trembled as she waved him over. "That wind last night took down a whole panel of the back fence," she said. "I tried to lift it, but, well, these bones aren't what they used to be." Michael gave a soft smile. "Don't worry, I've got it." She opened her mouth, maybe to argue or maybe to thank him, but he was already moving, unlatching the side gate, toolbox clinking, Sonny trotting at his heels. The fence wasn't just broken. It was splintered in half, dragging the ground like a tired soldier. Michael crouched, ran a hand over the jagged wood, and got to work. No questions, no charges, just hammers and quiet kindness. Sonny didn't stray. He lay down in the dirt, chin resting on his paws, watching as if this was just another one of their routines now. An hour later, the fence stood straight again. Not perfect, but strong enough to hold through another storm. Michael wiped his brow and returned to the porch, pulling the thermos from his coat. "You mentioned soup last time we talked," he said, handing it to Mrs. Hendricks. "This one's chicken and rice. Not fancy, but warm." The old woman blinked, clearly holding back tears. "You remind me of my husband," she whispered, "always showing up before anyone asked." Michael nodded softly. "He sounds like a good man." She chuckled. "He would have liked you." As he walked back through town, the sun peeking out from behind winter clouds, Sonny nudged his hand with his nose, gently, like a thank you. Michael scratched behind his ears. Neither of them said a word. They didn't have to. The man rolled up in a glossy silver Mercedes, the kind of car that looked out of place on a road with potholes and faded paint lines. He stepped out wearing a tailored coat and expensive sunglasses, even though the sun was barely making an appearance. Michael was under the hood of a beat-up sedan, hands greasy, elbows deep in a stubborn engine. He didn't look up until the man cleared his throat. "You the one who found a golden retriever last week?" Michael wiped his hands on a rag and nodded slowly. "That's right." The man's eyes scanned the lot until they landed on Sonny, who sat loyally by the garage door, tail wagging once, then still. His posture changed the second he saw the stranger, ears low, shoulders tense. "That's him," the man said confidently. "Name's Cooper. Been looking for him. Got out of the estate last week." Michael didn't respond right away. He studied the man, sharp watch, designer boots, a briefcase sitting on the passenger seat. Everything about him screamed money, but not a hint of warmth, not a glance toward Sonny, not even a bend of the knee to greet him. "You got any proof?" Michael asked. The man smirked like the question offended him. "Doesn't take a detective to see that's my dog. Purebred, trained, probably worth $6,000 easy. Look, I'll make it simple. You've done your good deed, and I'm willing to pay for your trouble." He reached into his coat and pulled out a thick envelope, folded neatly. "There's $2,000 in here. No questions, no arguments." Sonny took a step back. Not a growl, not a bark. Just distance. Michael felt his jaw tighten. He'd seen scams before, and even if this wasn't one, something didn't sit right. "He doesn't seem to recognize you," he said calmly. The man shrugged. "He's probably confused. Happens." Michael looked down at Sonny, then back at the man. "I'm going to hold on to him a little longer, until I'm sure." The man's smile vanished. "You really want to play it that way?" Michael folded the rag slowly. "Yeah, I do." After a long stare, the man turned, slipped back into the Mercedes, and drove off without another word. Sonny didn't move until the car was gone. Then he walked over, sat beside Michael, and leaned gently against his leg. Some things can't be bought. Michael knew that, and apparently so did Sonny. Rosie's diner buzzed with its usual morning shuffle, clinking coffee cups, the sizzle of bacon, the hum of half-finished conversations. Michael sat in his usual booth by the window, flipping through an old newspaper he couldn't afford to subscribe to, but read every day anyway. Across the table, Emily dunked her toast into a pool of syrup, lost in the kind of joy only a child could find in a breakfast special. Sonny lay curled at their feet, calm but alert, eyes flicking up every time someone entered. Michael noticed it, how he scanned faces, almost as if waiting for one in particular. The door chimed. Michael didn't look up right away, but Sonny did. He didn't bark, didn't move, just raised his head slowly, ears perked, like he was waiting for something to fall into place. She was already halfway to the table before Michael registered her, the woman from the corner seat, the one who never ordered food, the one who vanished through the side door. Today, she didn't sit in the shadows. She walked straight to Michael's booth, her heels quiet on the tile, her expression calm but deliberate. Dark hair pulled back, gray wool coat draped over a fitted navy suit. No briefcase, no bodyguards, just her and a slight hesitation before she spoke. "Hi," she said softly. "May I sit?" Michael blinked, then nodded. "Sure." Emily looked up, wide-eyed. "You look like a movie star." The woman smiled faintly. "I'm definitely not." She sat across from Michael and folded her hands. There was a pause, long enough to feel like the room had quieted around them. "That dog," she began, voice low. "The one you found in the storm." Michael's shoulders stiffened. He glanced down at Sonny, who hadn't moved. "He's mine," she said gently. Michael didn't say anything at first. He studied her, really studied her. And something about her didn't read like that man with the envelope. There was no smugness, no angle, just something closer to sadness. "You've been watching," he said, not accusing, just stating. She nodded. "Why didn't you come sooner?" Her gaze dropped to Sonny. "Because I wasn't sure I deserved to." Sonny stood then, walked to her side and sat quietly. No bark, no leap of joy, just a steady, calm presence. He hadn't forgotten her, but he hadn't left Michael's side either. Michael leaned back slightly, folding his arms as Sonny settled on the floor between them like a bridge built out of silence. The diner buzzed on, plates clattered, orders were called, and Cheryl refilled someone's coffee at the counter, but at their table, time felt like it had paused. "I'm going to need more than just a quiet confession," Michael said. Not unkind, not confrontational, just firm, like a man who'd seen too many people say one thing and mean another. "Anyone can walk in here and say he's theirs. One already tried." Maya didn't flinch. If anything, a small smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "Good," she said softly. "I was hoping you'd say that." She reached into her coat and pulled out a slim leather folder, the kind that belonged more in a boardroom than a diner. With careful hands, she slid 2 items across the table. First, a printed certificate with an official seal, a microchip registration attached to a name. Solstice, Golden Retriever, DOB 214. Michael scanned it, jaw tight. Then she slid the second item over. It was a photo, old and worn at the edges. A golden pup just a few weeks old, paws too big for his body, ears floppy, tongue out in a blur of joy. Sitting beside him was a younger version of Maya, no suit, no poise. Just jeans, a sweatshirt, and a laugh frozen in time as the puppy climbed into her lap. Emily leaned forward, eyes wide. "That's Sonny!" Maya's gaze softened. "His real name's Solstice. I used to call him Saul, but Sonny works too." Michael said nothing. He looked at the photo, then at the woman, then at the dog, who still hadn't moved from his place on the floor. "Why no flyers?" he asked finally. "Why no search?" Her voice dropped low, more vulnerable now. "Because I knew where he was the moment he stopped showing up at the estate. The GPS tag told me. The cameras confirmed it. But I wanted to see what kind of man would help a dog without asking for anything back." Michael studied her. "And now?" he asked. Maya met his gaze. "Now I'm asking if I can earn him back." For the first time Sonny moved, resting his head on Michael's boot, even as his tail wagged faintly toward her. Michael looked down at him and murmured, "Well, that's not a choice I can make alone." The next afternoon, the air felt heavier than usual, like the sky couldn't decide if it wanted to cry or just linger in gray silence. Michael stood by the garage's front lot, arms crossed, watching as Maya's black SUV pulled in. The same vehicle that had once parked across the street in the shadows now sat parked in plain view, no secrets this time. Emily clung to Sonny's neck, her face buried deep in his fur. "He's not just a dog," she whispered, sniffling. "He's our family now." Michael knelt beside her, brushing her hair back gently. "I know, sweetheart, but we don't get to keep what was never ours to begin with." Maya stepped out of the SUV slowly. She wasn't dressed for business today. No suit, no heels, just a thick sweater, dark jeans, and the kind of nervousness people don't expect from billionaires. She walked up to them, holding Sonny's original leash loosely in one hand, her eyes soft but unreadable. "I promise he'll be safe," she said. "He'll have everything he needs." Emily shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "But does he want everything, or just us?" Maya knelt down then, meeting Emily's eyes, and for a moment the world shrank down to just the two of them. "I think he wants both," Maya said softly, "and I don't know how to give him that yet." Sonny stood quietly, not resisting as Maya clipped the leash onto his collar, but he didn't move toward the car. He just looked back at Michael and Emily, waiting, maybe hoping, for someone to say it was all a mistake. Michael finally nodded. "Go on, boy." Sonny's tail gave a weak wag. He walked toward the SUV, paws hesitant, ears low. He jumped in the back seat with a heavy thump and sat down, staring out the window. Maya didn't get in right away. She stood beside the open door, fingers curled around the handle. "Thank you," she said, eyes on Michael now, "for everything." He gave a tight nod. "Take care of him." As the SUV pulled away, Emily pressed her face into Michael's chest and cried. And Michael, who had seen more losses than he liked to count, held her close. Up the road, Maya drove slower than she needed to. Every glance in the mirror showed Sonny staring back at the place they'd just left. And somehow, the goodbye felt like a door half closed, not shut. Not yet. The morning after Sonny left, the shop felt quieter, not just in sound, but in spirit. The kind of stillness that settles after something important walks out of your life. Michael arrived early, out of habit more than necessity, and paused at the front door when he noticed something unusual. A white envelope, neatly tucked under the metal frame, fluttered slightly in the breeze. No name, no return address, just a clean fold and a sense that someone had left a whisper instead of a knock. He bent down and picked it up, fingers brushing the faintest trace of perfume. Inside there was a small note written in careful script. No signature, just words. "Thank you for showing him kindness when the world forgot how. People like you are rare. I hope this helps." Beneath it, folded crisp and untouched, was a check. Blank. No amount written. Just Michael's name on the pay-to line and a signature scrawled with practiced grace, Maya Whitlock. He stared at it for a long time, the corners of the paper fluttering slightly in his hand. It was power tucked into four corners of a slip he hadn't asked for. A doorway to anything, a new roof, new boots for Emily, groceries without guilt. He could write any number and the bank wouldn't blink. He walked inside, set the envelope on the workbench, and stood there staring at it while the coffee brewed. It felt like a test, or maybe a gift, maybe both. By noon he had folded the check back into the envelope, sealed it shut, and slid it into the top drawer of his old filing cabinet right next to expired warranties and worn-out receipts. He never told Emily about it, and when Cheryl at the diner asked if he'd heard from that fancy dog lady, He just shook his head. She said thank you, was all he said. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing past the shop like a visitor passing through. Some things you earn, some things you let go, and some things, Michael knew, were meant to come back in their own time. It was a Thursday morning when she showed up again. No engine, no headlights, no SUV humming down the road, just footsteps, soft ones, on gravel, the crunch steady and unhurried. Michael didn't hear her at first. He was beneath a rusted-out sedan, wrench in hand, sweat on his brow despite the chill in the air. Then a shadow moved across his boot. He slid out from under the car, expecting a customer or a neighbor with a battery issue. Instead, she stood there, Maya, dressed in a dark wool coat. No heels this time, no makeup, hair pulled back into a simple ponytail that made her seem strangely human. "You walked," Michael said, wiping his hands on a rag. She nodded, catching her breath. "Didn't feel right to drive." He leaned against the side of the car, not entirely sure what to make of her. "I've been thinking about the limp," she said. "Sonny's, I mean. When I picked him up, it was gone. He'd had it for months. Vets couldn't figure it out. But you did something." Michael shrugged. "Just noticed he wasn't favoring it when he moved a certain way. Muscle stiffness, maybe. Heat helped. He trusted me enough to let me work on it." Maya looked down, hands in her coat pockets. "He's different now, quieter, calmer, like something in him settled." Michael didn't speak. "I couldn't sleep," she added. "I kept thinking about how he looked when I called his name and he didn't come running. He used to, every time. But that day, he looked at you first." Michael met her eyes. "Dogs know what they need." Maya nodded slowly. "So do people sometimes." She hesitated, then asked quietly, "Would it be all right if I just sat a while?" He motioned to the porch bench, the old one with the cracked armrest and years of weather worn into its bones. "It's not much," he said, but it's honest." She sat. And for the next hour they didn't talk about money or ownership or the way the world splits people into categories. They just shared the silence. And somehow it felt like something was starting again. It started with coffee. Not the fancy kind with foam art or imported beans. Just two mismatched mugs from the garage break room, filled with whatever Michael had brewed that morning. He handed her one, steam curling into the late morning air, and she accepted it without a word. No filters, no titles, just two people standing in the quiet hum of an ordinary day. Then he said, "You want to see the town?" She smiled slightly. "Is it walkable?" He looked down at her polished boots, then at his own worn work boots, caked in the town's signature blend of dust and grease. "If those survive Maplewood's sidewalks, I'll be impressed." They walked, past the church with peeling white paint, where the bells rang off-key but always on time, past the school playground where kids screamed joy into the sky, past the barbershop window where old Pete waved from behind the glass, clippers in hand. Michael greeted everyone by name, the mail carrier, the gas station clerk, even the stray cat outside the bookstore that he swore nodded back at him. Maya watched it all, silent at first. But the longer they walked, the more she saw. Not just the town, but him. How he slowed when they passed Mrs. Callahan's house, knowing she couldn't get out much anymore. How he nodded to the teenager dragging a garbage bag, asking, "Your mom doing okay today?" How he paused at the corner store window and tapped on the glass so the shop owner's toddler inside could press his tiny palm against the other side. He wasn't trying to impress her. He wasn't trying at all. He just was. "I get why Sonny chose you," she said finally. Michael glanced at her. "Wasn't much of a choice. He just showed up and stayed." "No," she said, her voice softer now. "He recognized something. Something good." They paused at the edge of town where the fields opened wide and the sky stretched bigger than it had any right to. She stood there, her designer boots dusted with earth, side by side with a man who smelled of engines and knew how to fix things people didn't even know were broken. And, for the first time in a long time, Maya felt like maybe something inside her had been quietly repaired too. They sat on the hood of his old truck, the one parked behind the garage that hadn't run in years but still offered the best view of the hills at sunset. Emily had drawn a smiley face in the dust on the windshield weeks ago, and it remained like a quiet signature of hope no one had the heart to wipe away. Maya took a sip from her second cup of coffee, this one from Rosie's, lukewarm and a little bitter, just how Michael liked it. He leaned back on his hands, elbows resting against rusted metal. "So," he said, "I gotta ask, what brings a woman like you to a place like this, besides chasing down runaway dogs?" Maya didn't answer right away. Her eyes were fixed on the horizon, where the sky was melting into layers of rose gold. Finally, she said, "I'm thinking about building something. A project." Michael chuckled. "Sounds vague. Dangerous, even." "It is?" she replied, lips curving into the smallest smirk. "I want to start a new division. Something different from the corporate mess I'm used to. Local. Honest. Focused on giving people real chances instead of lip service." Michael raised a brow. "You launching a company or a campaign speech?" "I'm launching a program," she said, more serious now. "A skills initiative. Mechanics, repair, community-driven. I want it to be real, run by people who actually live it, not suit-wearing consultants with zero grease under their nails." He looked at her sideways. "And let me guess, you want me to run it?" "I want someone I trust to help shape it," she corrected. "Someone who doesn't just talk about doing good, but shows up with soup and a wrench." Michael shook his head, a dry laugh escaping his throat. "You do realize I don't even own a laptop, right?" She smiled. "Good. That means you won't waste time making slides when you could be making something real." He took a breath, then looked at her, not as the billionaire, not as the woman in tailored coats, but as someone standing at the edge of something uncharted. "You don't even know if I'd say yes." "I don't need to know," she said, eyes steady. "I just need to ask." And that somehow felt like the start of a bigger kind of trust. Saturday morning came slow, like it knew the town needed a breather. The sky was soft with overcast light, and the usual hum of power tools and pickup trucks was traded for birdsong and the occasional bark echoing from a backyard. Michael stood at the workbench, tightening the last bolt on a lawnmower engine, while Emily sat nearby on an upside-down milk crate, drawing with chalk on the cracked pavement. Sonny, now freshly groomed and wearing a red bandana Emily had tied herself, snoozed under the shade of the old oak just outside the garage bay. Everything felt settled, at least for now. Then Maya appeared. She didn't honk, didn't text, just walked up like she'd always belonged, carrying 2 paper bags from Rosie's, one marked Turner in Sharpie, the other E. She wore jeans and a loose sweater, her hair pulled back in a low bun, and her heels replaced with worn-in sneakers that still somehow looked expensive. "Delivery service," she said, holding up the bags like a peace offering. Michael gave her a half-smile and wiped his hands. "That'll earn you coffee privileges for life." Emily turned at the sound of her voice, squinting up at the tall woman with cautious curiosity. Maya crouched beside her and offered the smaller bag. "Cinnamon roll, with extra icing. Rosie said it was your favorite." Emily took it carefully, then studied her for a long moment, the way only kids can, with eyes that saw everything, even when they didn't have words for it. "Are you my dad's friend?" she asked finally, voice quiet but curious. Maya blinked, taken off guard by the question. "I hope so," she said honestly. Emily tilted her head. "You look like someone from the movies, but you talk normal." Michael laughed softly from the bench. "That's about the highest praise you'll get from her." Maya smiled. "I'll take it." Emily unwrapped her cinnamon roll and sat cross-legged on the ground beside Sonny, who leaned over to sniff the icing. She glanced back up. "If you are his friend, you should come by more. He doesn't have many." Michael looked away, pretending to adjust a wrench he didn't need to touch. Maya looked at him, And for the first time since all this began, the word friend didn't feel small. It felt like the beginning of something sacred. The invitation came on a folded piece of cardstock, tucked inside a takeout bag from Rosie's. Michael didn't notice it until later that evening, when he was cleaning up dinner scraps and trying to get Emily to stop feeding Sonny bits of her cornbread under the table. He pulled it out with a confused squint, expecting a receipt. But it was handwritten, simple, and neat. Dinner, my place, Friday at 6. You and Emily. No pressure, just food, maybe a fire, and a little less distance. Maya. He stared at it longer than he should have. That night, he left it on the kitchen counter and told himself he'd think about it. But every time he passed by, he saw the way Maya had worded it. Carefully, like she didn't want to push, like she wasn't sure if he'd say yes. By Thursday night, he was still undecided. "You should go," Lucy said while helping Emily with her hair in the living room. "Emily's been bouncing off the walls since she heard." "I don't know," Michael muttered. It's not my world." Lucy gave him a look that only older sisters can manage. "Your daughter thinks the woman's a princess. Don't be the guy who makes her miss dinner at a castle because of his pride." Friday came with a hesitant sky, the kind that couldn't decide between golden hour and storm clouds. By 5:30, Michael had put on his cleanest button-down, still faded, still wrinkled, and tried to tame his hair in the mirror. Emily wore a dress she'd saved for school picture day. She called Sonny their royal escort. When they pulled up the long driveway, Emily's breath caught. "It's a castle," she whispered, eyes wide. The estate stood tall and timeless, wrapped in ivy and late autumn light. Stone steps, glass doors, a fountain in the center that made Michael feel like his boots didn't belong anywhere near it. Maya greeted them barefoot, apron dusted in flour, hair tied up in a messy knot. "You came," she said, half relief, half smile. Michael glanced at Emily, already skipping up the steps, then at Maya. "Yeah," he said softly, "we did." The inside of the mansion was breathtaking, but not in the way magazines promised. It was grand, yes, vaulted ceilings, polished wood floors that stretched on forever, walls lined with paintings that probably cost more than Michael's house. Every detail whispered wealth, but beneath the shine, something felt hollow. Michael stepped cautiously through the foyer, boots scuffed from gravel, feeling like he was walking on the edge of a museum exhibit. Emily ran ahead, marveling at the chandelier and calling out echoes just to hear them bounce back. Sonny padded beside her, already at ease like he'd remembered every corner. Maya walked beside Michael in silence, watching his eyes take everything in. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, just didn't expect it to feel so quiet in here." She didn't answer at first, just turned toward the long hallway. "Come on, dinner's through here." They passed room after room, living spaces too big to be lived in. Couches with perfect corners, a piano without fingerprints, bookshelves full of hardcovers that looked untouched. Michael peeked into one room that looked like it was meant for guests, but felt like it had never seen one. "How many people live here?" he asked. Maya glanced over her shoulder. "Just me, and for a while, Sonny." Michael raised an eyebrow. "All this space, just for you?" She gave a half smile. "I used to throw parties, big ones. People came because they wanted to be close to the brand, not to me." He didn't respond, just looked around at the cold beauty of the place. It was elegant, sure, but it was the kind of elegance you kept at arm's length. Everything was placed, not lived in. Everything was pristine, untouched, waiting for someone to need it. The dining room table stretched the length of a small bowling alley, but Maya had set just 3 places. At one end, candles low, food warm, music playing softly from a speaker hidden somewhere in the walls. Emily beamed as she sat down. "It smells like Christmas." Maya laughed. "That was the goal." Michael took his seat slowly, looking around once more. The mansion was beautiful, immaculate, impressive, but it was also empty, until now. The fire crackled gently in the hearth, casting a warm glow across the stone walls. After dinner, Emily had fallen asleep curled up beside Sonny on a plush armchair twice her size, clutching a blanket that Maya had handed her with quiet tenderness. The dishes were cleared, the music turned down low, and now Michael sat on the edge of a velvet-cushioned bench in the library, a glass of water in his hand, the silence stretching comfortably between him and Maya. She stood by the window, arms folded loosely, her eyes distant, as if studying a memory painted on the glass. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice softer than usual. "Something you might not like." Michael tilted his head slightly. "All right?" She turned to face him, her expression unreadable but sincere. "You remember the article, the one about the mechanic who fixed an old teacher's car and left a note that just said, 'Pay it forward when you can'?" Michael gave a short laugh. "Didn't think anyone read that thing outside of town." "I did," she said. "It showed up in my news feed by accident. One of those local human interest blurbs they toss into national business sections like an afterthought. I was halfway through reading about an IPO when I clicked it." Michael's brow furrowed. "So that's how you found me?" She nodded slowly. "At first I just thought it was sweet. A story like that doesn't show up often in my world. But something about it stuck. You didn't give your name in the note. The article barely mentioned it. But your garage name showed in the background of a photo." "And you just started watching?" he asked, no judgment in his tone, just curiosity and maybe a trace of disbelief. "I did," she said. "Not in a creepy way. I didn't know why at first. I just needed to believe people like you still existed." Michael looked down at the glass in his hands, silent. "I'd forgotten what it looked like," she continued. "Genuine kindness. Someone doing good just because it's right, not because there's a camera or a transaction." "And the dog?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Sonny never runs, not unless he's chasing something that feels like home. I think he found it before I did." Michael exhaled slowly, the truth settling in like dust catching the firelight. "Next time," he said gently, "you could have just knocked." Maya sat on the floor beside the fireplace now, her knees pulled up, heels off, hair loosening in quiet rebellion from its earlier perfection. The glamour had melted away with the candlelight, and what was left was something raw, something closer to real. Michael stayed seated on the couch, not pressing her, just watching, waiting, like a man who understood that some silences aren't meant to be filled, only honored. "People always assume I had it all," she said at last, eyes flickering with firelight. "The money, the houses, the brand. But the truth is, none of it ever felt like mine." Michael didn't speak, letting her continue. "I grew up with too much too soon. My parents were more interested in legacy than love. They raised us like projects, expected to perform, impress, outdo." She paused. "But my brother Aaron, he was different." Her voice cracked gently on the name. "He used to sneak out at night, just to drive into town and play guitar at dive bars. Told me once that music made him feel like he existed outside their expectations, like he could breathe." Michael leaned forward slightly, listening not just with his ears, but with everything in him. "We were close. Not in a perfect siblings kind of way. He was reckless. I was calculated. He got arrested twice before he turned 20. I covered it up both times. But he—" She swallowed hard. "He was real. And when he died, overdose, alone in a hotel room, I realized how far we'd drifted, how much I'd failed to see what he needed." Michael's gaze dropped to the rug. I'm sorry." She shook her head. "After that, I couldn't do boardrooms and press junkets the same way. So I stopped, took time off, traveled, thought maybe I could disappear long enough to matter to someone on real terms." "And Sonny?" he asked. She looked toward the sleeping dog curled beside Emily. "He was Aaron's," she said. "Gifted to him by someone who wanted to fix him. After Aaron passed, he became mine by default. But truthfully, I think he's always been his own." Michael glanced toward the two of them, child and dog, tangled together like roots, then back at Maya. "You're not broken," he said softly. "You're just not finished yet." Her eyes met his, and for once she didn't look away. The call came late, well past closing, after Emily had gone to bed and the shop lights had gone dark. Michael had just set down a mug of tea when his phone buzzed with a number he didn't recognize, but something in his gut told him to answer. "Maya?" he said after a moment. Her voice on the other end was barely more than a whisper. I didn't know who else to call." 10 minutes later he was in his truck, driving through the dark with headlights cutting through fog. The mansion looked different at night, less impressive, more isolated. He let himself in with the gate code she'd shared weeks ago and found her curled on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, face pale, forehead damp with sweat. "I thought it was just a headache," she murmured. Then chills hit. "I didn't want to call anyone from the house staff. Didn't want the noise." Michael said nothing. He just crouched down beside her and gently pressed a hand to her forehead. Burning. "Flu, maybe worse," he muttered, already checking her pulse like it was second nature. "Why didn't you say something earlier?" She gave a weak smile. "Wasn't sure I was allowed to be vulnerable anymore." He moved quietly through her kitchen, boiling water, grabbing a thermometer, rummaging for clean towels. Sonny paced at her feet, worried but silent. Michael returned with medicine, a damp cloth, and the calm hands of someone who'd done this before, many times. Not for billionaires, but for his daughter, his sister, his mother once. He helped her sit up, held the cup as she sipped, tucked the blanket tighter around her shoulders when she shivered. Not once did he ask for anything. Not once did he bring up how strange it was, how the woman who'd built an empire couldn't stand on her own tonight. He just stayed. That night he slept on the couch across from hers, boots still on, jacket draped over him, one eye open whenever she stirred. And when dawn broke soft and silver over the estate, she whispered into the quiet, "You didn't have to stay." He replied without looking up, "Yeah, I did." By the time Sunday service let out, the town had already chosen sides. Rosie's diner buzzed with half-whispered theories between bites of pancakes. The gas station clerk leaned across the counter with raised brows as customers paid for coffee. Even the librarian paused her stamping to murmur, "Did you see that car outside Michael Turner's shop again? That black one with the city plates?" People noticed. They always did. Some were warm about it. "Good for him," they'd say. "About time something good happened to Michael." Those were the ones who remembered when he stayed up 3 nights fixing the church furnace during a blizzard, or how he let Mrs. Dorsey's son work odd jobs at the shop after school when no one else would give him a shot. But others were sharper, colder. "Figures, she's slumming it for some PR stunt. You think he's got her fooled? She'll be gone in a month. Bet he's selling out. Just wait, there'll be a big chain garage sign up by summer." Michael didn't hear all of it firsthand. He didn't have to. In a town like Maplewood, silence speaks louder than words. It was in the way some folks stopped waving as he passed, how others gave him that too polite smile that meant they'd already made up their minds. At the garage he kept his head down, repaired what needed repairing, changed oil, tuned engines. But the whispers followed, clinging like smoke after a fire. He noticed Cheryl hesitating before asking if Maya would be coming by again. He saw the old man at the hardware store nudge his buddy when Michael walked in, and though he never said a word to defend himself, he felt it, in the pit of his stomach, the space where doubt likes to grow. But then Emily came home with a drawing, him, Maya, and Sonny standing under the sun, holding hands, smiling. "Someone in class said she's too fancy to like you," Emily said innocently, chewing on her pencil. "But I told them they're wrong. You're my dad. You're the best." Michael smiled and kissed the top of her head. Let them talk, he thought. He knew who he was, and maybe, just maybe, so did she. The offer didn't come in a boardroom or over a contract or with champagne and handshakes. It came under the shade of the old oak tree behind the garage, where Michael had set up a folding chair and an oil-stained table to sort through parts for a rebuilt carburetor. Maya leaned against the tree trunk, sleeves rolled up, a notepad in hand, more for comfort than necessity. Sonny lay sprawled at their feet, tail twitching in his sleep. Emily was inside the shop painting a "no tools beyond this point" sign that no one would actually obey. Maya took a breath and looked at Michael like she was about to admit something bigger than money. "I want to start something here," she said. "Not just charity, not a press release, something real." Michael didn't look up from the carburetor. "You already said that." She smiled. "Let me finish. I want to build a school, a place where kids, people who never had a shot, can learn to fix things. Not just machines. Themselves. Their futures." Michael set the part down slowly. "You're serious?" "As a heart attack." He studied her for a long moment. "What's the catch?" "No media," she said, eyes firm. "No ribbon cutting, no camera crews, no branded t-shirts. This isn't about me. It's about what you do here, the way you fix things without asking for thanks. I want to fund it, but only if you run it. Your rules, your name, your heart." Michael leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "I'm not a teacher." "You don't need a degree to teach integrity," she said, "or grit, or how to do a job right the first time." He looked past her toward the open garage bay where Emily hummed as she painted. "I don't want it to feel like someone else's idea," he said quietly. Maya stepped closer. "Then let's build it your way." And just like that, a seed was planted, not in contracts or checkbooks, but in trust. A secret partnership, quiet, rooted, the kind that doesn't seek applause, only purpose. It was a lazy Saturday morning, the kind where the sun came in slow and the world didn't rush to meet it. The garage doors were rolled up, letting in a breeze that smelled like pine and pavement. Birds chirped in the distance, and for once no engines roared, just peace. Michael stood beside an old truck raised on the lift, its undercarriage rusted and tired, but salvageable. Emily was by his side, oversized goggles slipping down her nose, her hands clutching a small wrench with both excitement and caution. "Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey," Michael said, his voice patient, his hands steady as he guided hers. "But before you turn anything, you feel it first. See if it's ready to move. Don't force it." Emily nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Like it's a secret code?" Michael chuckled. "Exactly. Every bolt tells a story. You just have to listen." Maya stood just beyond the frame of the bay door, leaning against the post, arms crossed, eyes fixed not on the truck, but on them. The way Michael knelt to Emily's level, the way he spoke with care, never dumbing it down, never rushing her, the way Emily looked up at him with pure belief, like he held the keys to everything that mattered. She didn't say a word, didn't want to break the moment. Emily grunted as she tried to turn the wrench, face scrunched, legs bracing like she was trying to move the earth. Michael smiled. "Try again, but this time, grip from here. Use your body, not just your hands." She shifted, tried again, and the bolt gave with a soft click. "I did it," she gasped, eyes wide with victory. Michael grinned. "Told you, mechanics in your blood." Emily beamed. "Can I fix the whole truck?" "Let's start with one bolt at a time." Maya felt something swell in her chest then, unexpected and warm, not envy, not regret, wonder. This wasn't a lesson in tools. It was a lesson in love, in presence, in being seen and taught not because you're small, but because someone believes you'll grow. And in that moment, she realized something quietly life-changing. She wasn't watching a mechanic. She was watching a father build a legacy, one wrench, one word, one daughter at a time. The rain came sudden and steady, the kind that blurred the world into soft edges and silver light. It drummed against the tin roof of the garage, poured in sheets off the edge of the overhang, and soaked the gravel lot outside in minutes. Michael stood just beneath the shelter, arms crossed, watching the sky fall, like it was trying to wash everything clean. Maya stepped out from the office behind him, her coat draped over one arm, boots clicking lightly on the concrete. She paused beside him, close enough for warmth, far enough for caution. "You always watch storms like they're trying to say something," she said softly. He smirked. "Sometimes they are. Other times, they're just reminding you what you can't control." Maya leaned on the post, her eyes tracing the distant flash of headlights through the fog. "You ever just wish it would all stop? The noise, the expectations, the way people look at you and only see what they want?" Michael turned to her slowly. "All the time." There was a long silence, not awkward, just charged, like the air before a lightning strike. "I used to think I had to earn every room I entered," Maya whispered. "Now I'm not sure any of it matters if no one in the room actually sees you." He studied her then, not the woman who ran companies or signed checks, but the one standing in the rain-soaked glow of his little world, tired of pretending, longing to feel real. She stepped closer. So did he. The space between them narrowed, breath meeting breath. The sound of rain muffled the rest of the world. Her hand brushed his arm. His eyes dropped to her lips. The moment stretched, begging to become something else. But Michael hesitated. "You deserve more," he said, voice low and raw. Not some half-wet kiss outside a garage, not a maybe from a guy still trying to pay his water bill. Maya looked up at him, eyes soft, no disappointment, only understanding. "I'm not asking for a castle, Michael," she whispered, "just something real." He nodded once, barely, and the kiss, so close, so nearly there, remained suspended in the storm, not denied, just delayed, waiting for the right moment, the right man, and maybe, just maybe, the right kind of love. The sun was setting behind the hills, casting a soft gold over the edge of the town as the last rays stretched across the garage lot. Michael stood outside the shop, wiping down a socket wrench with a rag, his mind 1,000 miles away. Emily's laughter echoed faintly from behind the building. She was chasing Sonny through the tall grass, her joy unbothered by anything adults spent their lives worrying about. He didn't hear Maya approach until her shadow touched his boots. "Hey," she said gently. He turned, surprised to see her without her usual calm reserve. She looked nervous, truly nervous, for the first time since he'd met her. Her hands held something large, rolled and tied with a ribbon, and dangling from her fingers was a single key. "I've got something to show you," she said. Michael raised an eyebrow but said nothing as she set the blueprint tube down on the tailgate of his truck and carefully unrolled it. Pages of detailed sketches spread out. Architectural renderings, floor plans, workshop layouts, a school, no, a working garage, a classroom, a place for kids to learn with their hands, to rebuild more than engines. At the bottom, in bold ink, were the words Turner Trade Academy. He stared at it for a long moment, speechless. Then Maya did something no one expected. She dropped to one knee. No ring, no cameras. Just her, kneeling in oil-stained gravel, a blueprint between them and hope written all over her face. "I'm not asking you to marry me," she said, voice trembling with something deeper than fear. "I'm asking you to build something with me. A real future, not out of wealth or reputation, but out of the kind of honesty this town forgot it needed." She held out the key. "To the building I just bought on Main Street. It's empty, but not for long." Michael swallowed hard, emotion rising like a tide. "You want me to run it? I want you to shape it, your way, with your name. I'll fund it. I'll fight for it. But I want to do this together." He looked at the key, then at her. It wasn't a proposal of love, not yet. It was something more dangerous. It was a proposal of trust. The grand opening was nothing like the press events Maya Whitlock used to host. No flashing cameras, no red carpet, no velvet ropes or industry insiders, just the sound of laughter, the smell of fresh paint and sawdust, and a banner strung across the entrance with bold, handwritten letters. Built on kindness, powered by second chances, the Turner Trade Academy sat on the edge of Main Street in what used to be an abandoned hardware store. Now its wide glass windows gleamed with life. Inside, tool racks lined the walls, workbenches were spaced in even rows, shelves full of donated and polished parts stood ready for use. Outside, folding chairs formed a half circle in the lot, filled with townsfolk, curious, skeptical, hopeful. Maya stood to the side, in jeans and a soft gray sweater, hands tucked in her pockets. No microphone, no stage, no spotlight. She didn't want it. This wasn't her story to tell. Michael stepped forward, adjusting his collar, his hands a little too stiff for comfort. Emily clapped first, sitting proudly in the front row beside Sonny, who wore a blue bandana with the words "Shop Dog" stitched into it. Michael cleared his throat. "I never thought I'd be standing here," he began. "Truth is, I've spent most of my life fixing things that other people gave up on. Engines too old, bolts too rusted, hearts too tired." A few quiet chuckles stirred in the crowd. But this place, this school, it's not about broken things. It's about the people holding the tools, the kids who were told they'd never make it, the folks who think they're too far behind to catch up. This place is for them, for us. He paused, eyes skimming the crowd. "I didn't build this alone. A lot of hands brought this to life. But it started with one moment, helping someone without expecting anything back. And somehow, that kindness came full circle." He turned slightly, catching Maya's gaze. "We're not here to impress anyone. We're here to open doors, turn wrenches, and maybe, just maybe, remind people that second chances aren't given. They're built." The applause started small, then swelled, and as the doors opened and the first class stepped inside, Michael stood at the entrance, not as a mechanic, not as a teacher, not even as a symbol, just as a man who showed up and stayed. The first few weeks of the school were a whirlwind. Early mornings, scraped knuckles, laughter in the halls, and the clatter of tools in hands that were just learning how to use them. Michael came home every night exhausted, but somehow lighter, like purpose had settled into his bones and made itself comfortable. And through it all, Sonny stayed close, never straying far from Michael's boots or Emily's backpack. At first, Michael wasn't sure if it was permanent. Maya still visited often, bringing donuts or spare parts, sometimes sitting in on the lessons, always listening more than she spoke. But every time she came, Sonny barely budged. He wagged his tail, sure, maybe even licked her hand, but then he'd trot right back to Michael's side or curl up at Emily's feet like the decision had already been made. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the school's windows in gold, Maya stood with Michael beneath the overhang, watching Emily chase Sonny around the lot with a wrench in her hand and a cape made from an old mechanic's apron. "He hasn't left your side," she said, her voice soft. Michael glanced at her. "I keep thinking he's going to hop in your car one day and just go home." Maya smiled, not sad, not bitter, just knowing. "He already did," she said. "He chose his home, and it wasn't my mansion or my name on a collar." Michael looked down at Sonny, who was now stretched out on his back, paws in the air, basking in the joy of a child's laughter. "He picked you, picked both of you." Michael let the words settle. He didn't say thank you, didn't need to. Maya had never been one for sentiment when truth could speak louder. "You still his legal owner," he said lightly. She grinned. "I'll draw up the papers, but between us, I think he made it official when he stopped waiting at my door." That night, Michael and Emily walked home under a sky streaked with stars, Sonny trotting ahead, always glancing back, always close. Some dogs are trained to stay, others just know when they're already home. The classroom was filled with the quiet rustle of notebooks and the low murmur of middle school voices, all waiting for their turn to speak. A row of hand-drawn posters hung along the back wall, Family Stories Week, each one with a name, a date, and a memory, The teacher, Mrs. Donovan, smiled gently from her desk. "All right, Emily, you're up." Emily Turner stood at the front of the class, a little taller than most of the girls her age, her hair in a messy braid, and her palms pressed nervously together. But when she looked down at her paper, her voice came out clear. "My story's about a dog. His name was Sonny." A few kids perked up. Everyone liked animal stories. "He showed up during a storm when I was 7, she continued. "We found him shivering behind my dad's garage. No tag, no number, just big eyes and a sad little limp. My dad brought him inside and gave him a blanket. I gave him a name." She glanced up, and for a moment her voice softened. "We didn't know it back then, but that dog, he wasn't lost. He was looking, and he found us." Some of the kids smiled. A few teachers paused their grading. "My dad was a mechanic, just a regular guy. We didn't have much, but he fixed things. Cars, heaters, fences, people too sometimes. One of the people he helped was Sonny's real owner, a lady from the city, really rich. Everyone thought she'd just take the dog back and leave, but she didn't." Emily paused. Her fingers curled around the edges of the paper now. "Instead, she stayed. She helped my dad open a school, not a big fancy one, just a place where people could learn how to fix things with their hands. And Sonny stayed too. He never left." She looked around the room, her voice full now. "My dad saved a dog once, but that dog saved all of us. He brought a woman into our lives who changed everything. He brought a chance, a school, a future." She smiled. "That's why I'm here today, because someone saved someone who couldn't say thank you, and it changed everything." The room was quiet. Mrs. Donovan wiped her eyes behind her glasses and whispered, "Thank you, Emily." And Sonny, now gray-muzzled and still waiting faithfully at the front gate of the school every afternoon, wagged his tail as if he knew she'd told it just right. The morning sunlight stretched across the kitchen floor in long golden ribbons, warming the worn wood beneath Maya's bare feet. The house smelled like maple syrup and pancakes, the real kind, not from a bottle but from a bowl. She stirred by hand, flour dusting her sweater sleeves. She hummed softly, barely aware she was doing it, as Emily leaned over the counter, flipping her own mini version with far too much confidence. Outside in the driveway, Michael lay under Maya's old classic car, the cherry-red convertible she hadn't driven in years. Not because it didn't work, but because no one had ever taken the time to really know what it needed. Until now. He grunted as he twisted the last bolt into place, hands smudged with grease, a rag tucked into the back pocket of his jeans. Sonny lay nearby in the grass, his muzzle more silver than gold these days, but his eyes still sharp, watching as if guarding something sacred. No reporters stood at the gates. No board members waited in the wings. No announcements were made. Just a Sunday morning, a family in all the quiet ways that matter most. Emily opened the screen door, barefoot and syrup-smudged. "Dad, pancakes are almost ready." Michael called back, "Tell the chef I'm bringing a side of transmission fluid." Maya appeared behind her, wiping her hands on a towel. She stepped out onto the porch, mug in hand, and smiled down at him. "How's the patient?" Michael sat up, wiping his hands, purring again. Just needed someone who didn't treat her like a museum piece. "Sounds familiar," she said softly. He looked up at her, and for a moment the past few years played out in silence. The storm, the dog, the diner booth, the missed kiss under the rain. Then she held out the mug. Coffee, 2 sugars. Just how he liked it. He took it without a word, their fingers brushing briefly. No wealth in sight, no spotlight. Just pancakes, grease, and the kind of love that never has to be spoken, to be understood. Sonny gave a soft huff and rested his head back down in the grass. He was home, and so were they.